25 years ago, The Phantom Menace was released. Almost. May 19th, 1999, I believe, was the release date. So it's about to be the 25th anniversary. But it being May the 4th, Carpe Diem, is being released this weekend. So we're going to talk about the 25th anniversary now. And as much as I know, there is nothing I can add to the Star Wars conversation at all. When it comes to the prequels, when it comes to the sequels, the original trilogy, it's all been said before on this platform. But if you come for my opinion on what is my YouTube channel, I feel it's worth touching base on The Phantom Menace. Came from a time of original trilogy, prequels are coming out, hype for the prequels are done coming out, prequel hating era, Disney, Star Wars, and now we're in the middle of that mess. I mean, I have updated thoughts on the prequels, more specifically The Phantom Menace, because, well, it's the 25th year of The Phantom Menace, that's the one we'll be talking about. So to take you to the mindset, we have to go to a time in 1999, pre-social media. I say pre-social media because we see a lot of hype now on social media, but the fact that the hype for The Phantom Menace was as peak as it was, and there was no social media to drive it, it's impressive. It's impressive. It's also a unique experience I haven't experienced since and never will, because now it's just a social media hype machine making it happen. I mean, the trailer for Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, said, if you see one movie this summer, see Star Wars. But if you see two, see Austin Powers. They knew they had no shot. Looking at it right now, that was New Line. It wasn't even Fox. There were only 3 Star Wars movies that existed, and that's all we had. We had the special editions that came out 2 years prior to The Phantom Menace in 1997. But since Return of the Jedi in 1983, in terms of new movies, Phantom Menace was the first. Not counting the Ewoks' Adventures, of course. In which Caravan of Courage, the Gorax, pure nightmare fuel. What the fuck, man? So many nightmares about that thing. Don't worry, I turned out okay. I remember getting out of Phantom Menace to be like, that felt so different. Shouldn't have been as surprising or shocking as it was. On April 10th, the month before, one of the radio stations was like, if you tune in at 7 p.m., we will play a new song from the new Star Wars movie, The Phantom Menace. My dad and I were there in the car. It was Duel of the Fates. And I was like, that doesn't sound like any Star Wars song I've ever heard. It was amazing, but sounded nothing like I had ever heard in Star Wars before. Which brings me actually to the first positive. And this is something everybody has always unanimously agreed on. John Williams crushed it with the prequel soundtracks, no denying. They were epic, inspired, heartfelt. It had a, I guess, new and updated energy to it, but still felt like it belonged in the same universe as the original trilogy soundtrack. I appreciate little things like you don't actually get the Skywalker theme in its entirety, or a longer section of it until Anakin actually blast the donut ship. The droid control ship, you know, he blasts it and he's flying out, and that's when it starts dun, 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 dun. That is definitely a moment in my formative years that taught me not overdoing something and saving it for the right moment just makes it sweeter. And I will say, I do watch the entire Skywalker saga, all 6 movies worth, about yearly. And after I rewatch Phantom Menace, I'm always left with 2 thoughts. 1, I understand why I was disappointed in the years after the movie. 2, I understand why I appreciate it more now. And it comes down to George Lucas doing what George Lucas did best, which is building a foundation, building a world of lore that's rich and worth exploring. Essentially a lot of what Phantom Menace is. The Phantom Menace is the setup movie. It's easy, for me at least, to see Phantom Menace as the prequel to the prequel. You look at Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, they're very close together in terms of cause, effect, timeline, characters, actors who play the characters. But Phantom Menace has Qui-Gon Jinn, a much younger Anakin played by Jake Lloyd. Much more Jar Jar Binks. You know, I almost felt like that could have been a book that explained how Anakin met Obi-Wan, and the prequels could have started at Attack of the Clones. Audience would still run into that situation of who's that guy when Anakin and Obi-Wan are in the elevator going up to see Padme in Attack of the Clones. If Attack of the Clones was episode 1, that is, you know, so guess nothing's perfect in the world. But if the entirety of the prequel era is baking a cake, Phantom Menace is definitely putting all the ingredients in the bowl. And it all came together much better for me when I saw the Phantom Menace for what it actually was, and saw the prequels for what they actually were. Yeah, the fall of Anakin Skywalker is a big part of it, but it's not his trilogy. It's Palpatine's trilogy. He's the man. He's the one doing the shit. Even when you have that momentum grinds when they all get to Coruscant and Phantom Menace, the whole thing is basically Palpatine manipulating this young queen because he's caused a crisis on her planet, manipulating her to kick his predecessor out of office so he can take power. Lies, manipulation to gain power, yeah, it's pretty close to home, don't it? And if you have not seen that, let me be the first to welcome you to Earth. And in terms of Palpatine, it's all symbiotically bound. You know, the revenge of the Sith, the extermination of the Jedi, the formation of the Empire, the crumbling of the Republic, the rise of Vader, the fall of Anakin. But among all of it, there's Puppet Master Palpatine. When I saw the prequels as his saga, it just kind of clicked. Ian McDiarmid's amazing as Palpatine. Always was. He was incredible in Return of the Jedi. So when I heard, hey, they got the same guy, that's what he was known as back when Phantom Menace was going to come out, when it was just, you got these articles in Entertainment Weekly magazine about the new Star Wars movie. This is what we knew. The guy from Trainspotting was going to be Obi-Wan. The girl from The Professional was going to be Luke and Leia's mom. The kid from Jingle All the Way was going to be Anakin Skywalker. Oscar Schindler was going to be a Jedi. And the same guy who played the Emperor in Return of the Jedi is going to play the younger Emperor here. Not that he was younger Emperor. The title didn't even exist. Lord be damned. That's how we phrased it, because that's just how we talked back in the 90s. And the pod race, every time I watch the pod race, I'm met with the same feeling I got when I first watched the pod race, which is it's cool until it starts feeling a little repetitive. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that the actual moment of humor, you know, because there's some humor in Phantom Menace, you're like, okay. But during the pod race, when those Tusken Raiders were up there camped, popping shots at the pod racers, I mean, come on. I don't know why that always cracked me up. Probably because if I lived on Tatooine, I would definitely do that. I'd be like, oh, dude, they're having another pod race. Come on, let's shoot at the pod racers. To me, the pod race always felt like a scene that was meant to sell a video game. And it did, and to be fair, Episode 1 Racer is fucking awesome. Does pod racing exist in VR? If it doesn't, hey, Disney, you wanna make some money? And the movie ends off with a sweet-ass fight. Because again, taking you back to a time before 1999. The lightsaber fights we had gotten before were between a cyborg and an old man, then a young Luke who doesn't really know how to lightsaber fight, and that same cyborg who doesn't actually want to kill him, then Luke in Return of the Jedi who knows how to lightsaber fight a bit better. Doesn't really matter because he doesn't want to kill Vader and Vader doesn't want to kill him. In lightsaber fights before Phantom Menace, the characters were being held back by something. Phantom Menace, you have Jedi and a Sith Lord in their prime out for each other's ass. That Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Darth Maul fight, it's so polished and so slick, so smooth. But makes sense that it is, because you're dealing with space wizards who would have that kind of intuition. That's obviously how Qui-Gon knew he would be okay, and Darth Maul wouldn't just spin his lightsaber around and cut Qui-Gon in half when he landed right next to him. Like, Darth Maul was so badass in this movie, and then he just died, and we had another guy, Count Dooku, to deal with in the next one. I always thought it would have been better to have Darth Maul stick around and, you know, get to know him a bit more. Enter the Clone Wars, which fleshed Darth Maul out. I'm not one for those death retcons. They always feel lazy to me. But Darth Maul was one I could get behind. I always felt like there was more worth knowing, so I was glad I was going to know it now. And that's kind of an important thing to remember when I'm talking about this. There might be an entire age group that does not know the prequels without the Clone Wars accompanying it. But there was a time that was not the reality. And Star Wars always lent itself to theorizing. You saw that during the Disney Star Wars movies when they were coming out. It was no different. Leading up to Phantom Menace, theorized. Episode 2, theorized. Episode 3, theorized. And theories about Qui-Gon Jinn persist to this day. What would have happened had he not been killed? I find it interesting to hypothesize, was Count Dooku correct? Qui-Gon in his frustrations with the Jedi Council, which you saw a little bit of that in the Phantom Menace, would he have joined Count Dooku? Would he have been a separatist? I don't know, these are interesting thoughts. And in the end, what makes me appreciate Phantom Menace more is just, it's the reason I appreciate the prequels more. But two things actually. One, the Clone Wars series helped immensely. It helped to flesh out more the lore that George built in the movies. I will always maintain a movie shouldn't have to rely on that to be enjoyable themselves. But as there are hills worth dying on in life, there was this series that people were like, yeah, that really does help flesh out the prequels. Like a lot. I can either stubbornly ignore them and be like, no. Or I could watch them with new lenses to watch the prequels through. In terms of me, I hate it when clues are given and then just never explored again. Like, oh, Master Sifo-Dyas. I have so many theories about Master Sifo-Dyas. It was a big deal. We're kind of going into Attack of the Clones. I'll try to keep it on course with Phantom Menace here. But still, the point remains, that was the thing that pissed me off about the prequels. Like, why are you going to introduce these things and just never explore them? Again, thank you to the Clone Wars for exploring them. And the second thing, well, the ineptitude of Disney Star Wars. Because now we've seen what worse is. As much as George's Star Wars, the prequels have inconsistencies. They're inconsistencies in terms of choice. Like, it just looks like forgetful people or bad decision making. Kind of cool to see Force run. You know, you can run fast with the Force. Illustrated early on in Phantom Menace. And then everyone from then on just forgets you could do that. But it's not like it's made up bullshit. Like, I understand why you can run fast with the Force. I do not understand how you can 3D fax inanimate objects to another person with the Force. That just sounds like fanfic to me. So there is a consistency in George Lucas' Star Wars. There's a concept of boundaries. A lightsaber that can melt a steel door? Yes, that will kill the person if they're stabbed with it. Yes, what a time to be alive. A consistent time in which a lightsaber stabbing would kill someone. But as Phantom Menace has come out 25 years ago, I've seen people who grew up on the prequels as their Star Wars. And it's like in the conversation of, oh, prequel hate, I almost feel like they don't believe it happened. And although the prequels at this point have been validated, I'm telling you, it did happen. I do wonder if Disney's going to do something that fleshes out the Disney Star Wars movies, specifically the sequel trilogy, which they could try to do, but that would be different than what happened for the prequels. With the prequels, great foundation, interesting world, solid lore, a clear vision of where it's going from the beginning. There's that. Could go for filling in some of the gaps and fleshing it out, which happened. The sequel trilogy doesn't have that foundation, doesn't have those characters. We also know at this point from interviews, it has been said on the record, they did not know where it was going. In order to fix the sequel trilogy, they would have to go back in time to unfuck what happened before. In which case you're talking about time travel, and once you start talking about time travel in Star Wars, I'm out. It's that whole experience of the sequel trilogy absolutely did help me appreciate what we had with the prequels. I still say they're flawed, but it doesn't matter. They're still a product of true passion and imagination from someone who actually loved and respected the characters. And this is all, again, hindsight. That's what the Phantom Menace has in its favor. Hindsight. And that's always 2020. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. Like I said, I know this is not some groundbreaking video. I don't have these new insights. I don't have anything you haven't already heard before from other folks. It just blew my mind that the gap between Phantom Menace and now is 3 years longer than the original Star Wars and Phantom Menace. I just wanted to touch base about Phantom Menace. It's kind of wild that, you know, when you've been on YouTube for as long as I have, about to be 15 years, I have thoughts, and I put those thoughts in video and I upload those on the internet. But time goes on and the mindset changes, but what I say and put out there is solidified in video stone. So yeah, worth touching base. Where's the Phantom Menace? I imagine you've seen it. I would be truly shocked if you had not. But more than have you seen the Phantom Menace, has your opinion changed on the Phantom Menace, the prequels? Or were you like, nah, I always loved them? Or, nope, sucked then, sucked now. Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.